Everybody, welcome back to the Heel Report, which is part of Tar Heel 24/7. I'm publisher Andrew Jones, and joining me is staff writer Noah Weisskopf. Noah and I have been all over the football team from the beginning of fall camp, August 2nd, to now. And Noah, yesterday, Wednesday, was signing day, 39 new players, and it kind of gives a little sense of a rebirth in some ways, a reset to the Bill Belichick era. What we're going to do in this conversation is discuss that, and we're going to discuss roster management. They're going to have to manage this thing and figure out who's not going to be around, what players they need to identify and go after, what kinds of players in the portal, which formally opens in a month, but guys are already putting their names out there now. So we're going to get into all these things. But before we move forward on the roster rebuild stuff, what were your takeaways from the press conference Wednesday, bringing in 39 new players? And Bill Belichick was available. Michael Lombardi was available. And full disclosure, you and I were not there because we were flying back from Lexington from the basketball game the night before. Travel can be what it is, so we were unable to be there in person, but we've consumed everything, and our network, our staff did a phenomenal job covering the entire event and the entire signing day.
Yeah, we did have Reich in there. So we had representation, which was good. So talking to him and watching everything back, I think the message was clear, is that they expect a lot from this class. This is the class that they really feel like will be the foundation for their program moving forward. They really feel like this is going to be the building block and the building piece for everything and to get to the point that they want to get to. Obviously, one of the biggest classes ever that 24/7 has ever seen. 39 guys. So it really feels like they're going to be relying heavily on these players to sort of be their kind of guys. And getting here last year, Belichick and Lombardi, they were a little late onto everything. And it's something they've harped on, is that now they had the opportunity to sit here a year to find their guys, the guys they really want out of high school, and now bring them all in. So there's a lot of opportunity. There's probably going to be more opportunity than normal for a lot of these younger guys to see the field really early on because they have that much trust in these kids. That's why they brought them in, and it's why the class is so big. They really want this class to be the foundation for everything they build and help them get to that championship level. So I think that's the most important thing that I took away, is that they have a lot of expectations for this class to sort of be the building block for them for the future.
No, you just said foundation. That's the word Bill Belichick used. Said it was foundational. I think it's interesting. Your 73-year-old head coach going into year two is talking about foundational class. And I think it's important to distinguish. And this isn't criticism at all. This is distinguishing what he means. And I believe, and I have a column that we ran on Thursday, that this was a learning year. We have a 78-year-old president. I think age doesn't matter as much now. And clearly age means nothing to Bill Belichick. Yeah. He's a football coach. He's not a 73-year-old football coach. He's a football coach. And he called this foundational. You don't get 39 kids in a class just to make it look like you're doing a lot of work. You get 39 kids in a class because you do need to be foundational. They had a whole year to kind of learn what the college football space is all about. And I will maintain, I've said this before and I'll say it again. You and I have talked about this many, many times as well. When Bill Belichick spent the first 50 years of his football career looking at college film, he never looked at it as college guys doing college things. He only looked at a couple of guys on film to determine how they translated to the NFL. Now he had to change course over the last year and look at college film with respect to college football and high school film with respect to translating to college football. So there was a massive, massive learning curve for him. There was one for Michael Lombardi, but especially for Bill Belichick. And I think what we've seen now is he's had 12 months. He was hired almost 52 weeks ago, and he's had a chance to go through the full cycle. Now he knows a lot of stuff, like any of us would know 1 year into any new job. He knows a lot of stuff, what he doesn't want anymore, what he likes as far as how he runs his program. I don't know about the communication stuff. We still got some questions about their messaging, communications, and things like that. But I think from a football savant standpoint, and he's called a football savant by so many people, he kind of knows exactly what he needs in those little spaces. He could look straight ahead and fill in all the cracks with all his full vision. And I think that's what part of this mission is, which is why I'm going to buy the reset. I'm going to buy the Bill Belichick reset. I'm going to say Wednesday was the first year of the second Bill Belichick regime at North Carolina. Whether or not their staff changes to me are unimportant right now in this conversation. It's more about talent evaluation. And the important thing that I think people need to understand is that 36 kids are enrolling in January. There's only one portal this year. So the whole roster will be in spring practice. So all of these freshmen will be competing with guys that they'll be competing with in August. So the ones that do get on the field early next year won't be there just because they're a lot of freshmen, but they will have competed against other more experienced players and earned those spots. So they'll be better freshmen than if you're just starting from scratch and slapping a lot of young dudes on the book and you're going to build that way. I think because of that, Carolina fans should have a little bit of optimism that whatever they can get out of this freshman class, they're going to know what it is when they head into fall camp next year.
And there's no question, too, after going through a year of Bill Belichick, the one thing that's pretty obvious is that he's not going to be committed to one player all year just because of the name, just because of seniority. I mean, we've seen it at so many different position groups, and oftentimes we've criticized him for it because he's playing almost too many players, right? Like at receiver, we see Madrid Tucker come in, and he has a pretty good game. And then after that, he's really fizzled out and didn't even see the field towards the last couple of games. And so, if anything, you know that this regime and you know that these guys want to just be playing the best player on a week-to-week basis. So I think that even if you don't see as many freshmen, say, for example, week one, going into the middle of the season, they might be half of the starters. You have no idea. And so they're given every opportunity. And we talk time and time again, and it's so big in the development of their Sunday Night Football thing. And it's something that Garrick McGee has been around a lot of programs. He's been to a lot of different places, the wide receivers coach, and he told us that it's unlike something he'd ever seen. The commitment to development is something that's really important to this regime, something they talk about all the time. And to have these young guys be able to go out there on Sundays and play another game against one another to improve and to develop, this is obviously going to be, and the messaging has been a little different too with the rebuild quote, like, right? Michael Lombardi said it was a rebuild. We didn't really hear that from Bill Belichick during the season. Players said it wasn't a rebuild. So I think this time and this recruiting class gives everyone an opportunity to sort of hit the pause button, reset a little bit, and say, we're going to be moving forward now with these, and these are the core pieces of what we're going to do in the future. So I think that the whole the rebuilding thing, I think, is sort of revitalized now.
Yeah, I agree. I'm glad you mentioned the player development because that's a really big thing too, because a lot of the players they invested last winter and spring into left.
Yep.
So for them, they now get to know that every ounce that they put into investment in January moving forward is going to apply to next fall. It's going to apply to the TCU game in Ireland and beyond. And I think that's really big too, because there's not going to be wasted teaching. I would imagine, and Bill Belichick, when we talked to him sometime, maybe in late October, was the first time he really told us that, look, I really didn't even have our team in the spring. There was almost a sense of disdain coming from him over the fact that they wasted half the year, more than half the year, because they didn't know until August what they had in some respects, based on what he's saying, and I'm going to take him at his word. So all that work that they did in January and February, building towards spring practice, then March and April, and then the staff together combing over everything they combed over, a lot of that was for naught because they almost started over in August in some respects, taking him at his word. And I do think there's a lot of that to it. So now they're not going to have that. They're going to be able to start planning ahead in January, knowing exactly what they have. And if they are geniuses, like a lot of people believe they are, and if they believe that Bill Belichick is going to learn so much from this first year, which his defenders are saying he will, look out for year two. The problem with that, Noah, is the schedule in year two. Yeah. And there's also a few other issues as far as who are going to be some primary key skill position guys you got to have quality moving forward. So they have a very difficult schedule. We don't know who is going to man some of the most important skill positions on the roster, but we do know what that schedule is. And I think this is the genius and the selling point. I think it's 2027, not 2026. 39 freshmen, you're not going to expect them to help out much in 26. But in 27 these days, they better or they're gone in a lot of cases. And 27 is a far more manageable schedule than 26. So that's the third year of the 5-year guaranteed contract. That's the 3 years are guaranteed. The last 2 are not. So that's year number 3 for Bill. If that's the target, I think Wednesday was the beginning of that process in reaching that target of 2027 more than 2026. 2026 is going to be another teaching and development year. Get what you can out of it, but we're going to 2027. And these guys who came in saying they were going to build something are going to be able to show everybody what they have built in year 3. That's where I think it actually unfolds.
I'm with you. I think that experience is going to be really important too next year. And we talk about all these freshmen, and some of them, if not more than half of them, will probably see the field in some capacity, right? Like that's just been, in general, the sort of vibe that we can get is that a lot of freshmen are going to play under Belichick. It doesn't matter if they're seniors or juniors ahead of them. They're all going to get some time on the field. And I think that experience in games like that, because most are going to be ranked games in the end, right? Like a lot of them.
Yeah.
So they're going to have a lot of tough games, a lot of really tough road games, especially. So to have these younger guys, these freshmen, your building blocks, go on the road, and if they don't get the result they want, if they don't get the win in the win column, and Bill says all the time, like you learn just as much from losing as you do winning. So I think that's going to be really important for it too. And to just get all these young guys experience on the field against these really top tier ACC teams, top tier teams in the country, it'll be really important and help them a lot in 2027 once these freshmen start to really make an impact every single down on the field. And most of them are probably going to be your starters at that point. So I think next year, more than anything, is experience too, getting these guys on the field, getting them used to the practice, getting them used to everything, and then having them throughout the whole year, all year round, and not having to sort of reset after the spring portal.
This will be something we will revisit obviously next fall, but they've got to play the guys.
Yeah.
Lombardi sent out the rebuild email the week before the Clemson game, then they pulled that thing. And the problem with believing that messaging at the time was they played 5 seniors with no eligibility remaining every offensive snap against Clemson. If you're rebuilding, you don't do that. And then you look at Torrey Newkirk's series the other night against NC State. You had 3 seniors on the offensive line with no eligibility remaining out there on the field. He should have been playing with some other guys. So they didn't fully back that up, but I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say all that's part of the information pool that they're going to sort through and say, you know what, may have lost some snap opportunities, or maybe there's just some guys that they think could be ready next year to get on the field some, but they didn't want to destroy them by getting them out there now and having them get blitzkrieged at the line of scrimmage, because the line of scrimmage is a lot different than the skill positions. The schedule next year, very quickly, since we brought it up to let people know, they open up against TCU in Ireland. They have East Tennessee State at home, but they also go to UConn, who will have a new coach. So maybe UConn's been pretty good the last few years. We don't know what they'll be next year, but that's not an easy non-conference road game to play. It's kind of a nonsensical game to play outside the league, in my opinion. And this is their cycle to get Notre Dame at home again. That's a tough schedule. Inside the league, their home games, NC State, they have Miami, they have Louisville, and they have Syracuse. On the road in the league, they have Duke, Virginia, Pittsburgh, and Clemson. It's hard to find some wins there outside of East Tennessee State and maybe Syracuse. I got to suspect that Fran Brown's team is going to be a lot better next year. So I think if they're not going to tell the world, we're going for 2027, that's terrible business for next year. But we can read the tea leaves and say, this looks a lot like a shot for 2027, a push for 2027, in my opinion, based on what was said yesterday, based on how they're going about building this thing, which is the next topic we're going to get into, Noah. They've got to build a roster. You and I have been combing over the roster this week. You've been taking the offense. I've taken the defense. By our count, as of right now, without any other departures, there are 71 players with eligibility remaining that can come back. They're all not coming back because they just signed 39 kids. That brings you to 110. They can't have more than 105 kids on scholarship. So at least 5 are going, but we know a lot more are because they're going to go into the portal.
Right.
So they're probably going to cut, I don't know, maybe half those kids. When I say cut, that's basically what happens now. Let them go. A lot of them are not under contract. Some are under contract for a second year, which will make it tricky. But how do you look at the rebuild of this roster to fill out the 105? They're at 110 now, and they want to bring in, let's say, 25 kids from the portal. That means they need to move 30 on.
Yeah. It's going to be fascinating. I think there's a lot of starting positions on their roster that they'll want to build through the portal and won't want to just throw some younger guys in there. You start right away looking at linebacker, I think, is the number one thing that just off the news, Kamori House is going to enter the portal. You already lost Andrew Simpson. He's out of eligibility. So immediately you have to replace 2 starting linebackers on your defense. And I think that too can be looked at as 2 of the most solid sort of consistent, I guess, in a way, pieces. They saw a ton of snaps all year long. I don't think either of them missed a game to injury. They were sort of your steady middle of the team. Andrew Simpson was an all ACC honorable mention. Like, he was sort of your focal point of the defense, your quarterback of the defense, if you will. So I think that's where it starts. But they're going to want to fill what the vibe I get from this regime is they're going to want to fill some spots. They don't want to build through the portal. They want to build through the class. They want to build through these 39 freshmen that they got, but they're going to fill in gaps with the portal. And it's to be determined on offense, which specific positions they're going to target. They're good for a couple of splashes in the portal. They're going to bring in guys. And I feel like on the offensive line, you have to assume that they want some more proven guys on the offensive line. But I think their moves in the portal will tell you a lot of how they see their season in 2026. If they bring in a ton of guys that have eligibility, maybe sophomores through the portal, then you know that these guys, they have belief in those players and they want to see them develop more. And they're not just the one and done at Carolina, right? They have multiple years. They can get experience. They can learn, get their fundamentals, all those things. And then in 2027, they'll be able to have that sort of year under their belt already. But I think linebacker is where it starts. But they're going to build really from the top down in the portal. I think that if you can get starting caliber talent, that's really where it's going to come from. It's going to come from the portal. And they're really going to build and fill out some of the key pieces that are leaving, the key pieces that graduated, they're out of eligibility. They'll build sort of their foundation through the recruiting, but then add some pieces on top of it to the portal to make them more competitive.
Yeah, and the other caveat to this is what players do they want to keep or are they able to keep?
Yeah.
Melcart's going to get offered a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
Guys like Isaiah Johnson, CJ Mims probably going to get offered some money. You got to think Tyler Thompson's going to get offered some money. Jaden Patterson's going to get offered some money. So they may have to overpay to keep some guys. And a positive is that they have 16 defensive backs with eligibility remaining, 15 defensive linemen with eligibility remaining. That includes the ends. So they did a nice job stacking up, loading up there a year ago and getting those guys in practice. And not only having the numbers there, but having enough that, look, we're not going to keep everybody, but we kind of know, let's say, the 8 that we really want to keep. And they've identified who those guys are already because they've seen them every day for the last year, basically. And I think that was one of the smart things they did by loading up in certain position groups a year ago. So I agree with you. I think defensively, linebacker is going to be the key. Being able to keep Melcart, I think, is a priority. It's a priority not just because he was very effective this year, but you have to let the fan base know that you're making the effort. Right. It's like in pro sports. I'm an Orioles fan. If they're not going to go out and sign any big free agents, then I'm going to say they're not trying. So they got to let the fan base know that they're doing everything in their power to keep the right guys around. That means Damon June on offense. That means Jordan Shipp on offense. That means Melcart and Tyler on defense, and so on. So I think that that's part of the equation as well. Will Melcart get offered so much money elsewhere that Carolina can't afford to keep him because of what they're going to allocate to different guys? Because you got to understand that there's a little bit more of a cap, so to speak, now than there used to be. I think that'll really be interesting as well. On the offensive side of the ball, we haven't brought up quarterback. People want us to bring up quarterback. I got to think that their eyes are on the portal for a quarterback. But one of the things people need to understand is that Gio signed a 2-year deal, $2 million a year. So there's some sticky things there about the money and does he get it if he stays or if he leaves and that kind of thing. However, that gets worked out, and I have tried to find out the details of it, and I do not know at this time. I would think that they probably will have an eye on the portal, but they also may think the answer's at home. They're very high on Travis Burgess. And if 2026 is a developmental year with that kind of schedule building toward 2027, would it be a huge surprise if Travis Burgess, who will be healthy, he's really making nice progress with his recovery right now, would it be a massive surprise that they roll with the true freshman?
I'm kind of torn on that because, when you throw a freshman into a season with the schedule that they have, I think it's sort of a double-edged sword. In one way, you can get experience. The guy gets experience on the field. He's seen a lot more, obviously, from playing games than just sitting and sort of taking it in as a mentor kind of guy. But on the other end, it's like if you throw him into a season like that, a schedule like that, Does it hurt confidence? How does it affect him mentally? We saw it with Dante Moore at UCLA as a true freshman. They threw him right in there. He didn't have a great year just because of the nature of their schedule, the nature of everything at UCLA. And then he transferred to Oregon and willingly took a back seat behind Dylan Gabriel. And now he's a starter at Oregon. He sort of realized that he needed that. He needed that time to just sit there and take everything in. And could it be the same with him? It could be. Would it be smart for them to have a veteran quarterback, whether that's Gio, whether they find the portal and bring someone in for a year and then have him play? It just depends. And then you have to look also at a Torrey Newkirk and Bryce Baker. Where do they see those guys fit into the mold? Because what message are you sending to those two guys if you say that Burgess is going to be your number 2 guy if you bring in a transfer guy, or if you start him? What message does it send to those two guys? Because neither of them will want to be here if the freshman's coming in and passes both of them up. So I think the ultimate X factor here is Bryce Baker, because Bryce Baker was the 4th string guy this year. Torrey Newkirk was ahead of him and got some time in that last game against NC State. So we have to see what they think of those two guys. But again, I think it's a double-edged sword if you want to start a true freshman in this sort of gauntlet of a schedule. Where do you balance? And that's a good question for Bill too. Where do you balance sort of wanting a quarterback to get his feet wet, wanting him to get experience on the field, versus putting him up against this competition in which you're really not setting him up for success in year one?
I think a really fantastic thing about the new portal cycle, there is no spring portal, is that if Newkirk and Baker stay, Gio stays, they bring in Burgess, the 4 of them are going to have 8 months to battle. And spring's going to be fantastic because, again, the work that the staff gets with those guys, and when they monitor chart movement, so to speak, there's going to be a carryover effect into player-led workouts in the summer and then fall camp in August, as opposed to all that time they put into Ryan Brown and then he was back with Purdue. And then they're suddenly stuck searching for a quarterback and they go bring in Gio. So I think that benefits this staff. This staff is a teaching staff. They're a player development staff. How many times did Michael Lombardi say that yesterday? We're a player development program. He said, a lot of you guys are fixated on the record, but you're not thinking about the player development that took place. So if player development is key, the new rules really benefit this staff and they benefit this quarterback room. Because if they keep everybody, they've got 4 guys that are either a starter with a ton of experience or 2 extremely highly rated kids coming out of high school in Burgess and Baker, and then a guy who's really intriguing like Newkirk. I told you earlier, we were talking on the phone, and I said this back in August when I watched the first practice. When I went there, it was the first time I'd seen on Torrey Newkirk, and I was like, what? Because he didn't show up until June. I said, man, he kind of pops. Throws a nice ball. He's taller than the others. Kind of stands out, except Max. He was a little bit shorter than Max, about 6'4". I liked him. And next thing you know, he's leapfrogged Bryce Baker, who showed up in January. In fact, Bryce Baker got a microphone at halftime of the LaSalle game last year when Bill Belichick was introduced. That was a wild scene out of a bad Hollywood movie. But if they have all 4 of them, man, that's going to be a fascinating story to track. Because if Newkirk and Baker say, you know what, I think I can be the guy, and they both come back, we're not going to talk about, well, whoever gets beaten out in the spring will just leave. They can't.
Yeah.
They're going to stay, which is a really cool thing. So the next month, the next 6 weeks, it's going to be vital to see what happens in that quarterback room and how they view 2026. Because if both of them go and they bring Gio back and they lose Baker and Newkirk and they have Burgess coming in, I think that lends a lot more credence to the whole 2026 as a bridge to 2027 thing.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
And I don't think there's any guarantee. First of all, we don't know right now what the nature of his injury was. He left that game against NC State. We don't know if he's out for, a couple more days, if he's out for 2 weeks, or if he's out for 2 months, or if he's out for a year. Like, we don't know the extent to that injury. So that, I think, is really the first thing that once we find that out, we'll have a better idea as to what they might do. So it's that, and then it's the portal. And I don't think it shouldn't, and it's not a lock that Gio is A, the starting quarterback for this team next year, B, on the roster for next year. Those are going to be conversations they're going to have with him. they're having conversations with every player up and down the roster to talk about their role moving forward and what makes the most sense for them and what makes the most sense for Carolina. And Gio is going to be one of those players that meets with this team. They're going to go over things with him and see sort of how they fit and how they feel he can fit into their program moving forward. So I think the X factor, I mentioned Bryce Baker, but also obviously Gio Lopez, you got to figure out what you're doing with him. You mentioned the 2-year contract, the 2-year deal that he has. So there's a lot of things to still figure out and a lot of time before the portal opens. But could Gio leave? Could he move on to somewhere else and see, at another program, what he can do as a starter? And that's just dependent on whether or not they talk to him and feel like he's going to be their guy moving forward, or they want to go in a different direction. So still a lot of time, still a lot of things that they need to figure out, a lot of things that we need to figure out once they figure it out of who can move where and how it's going to shake up. But certainly fascinating. Got a lot of different types of players in that room. So they have quite the decision to make. Or
they don't, because the only time Gio left the field this year were the 3 times where when he was injured against TCU, UCF and State, didn't play against Clemson because he was hurt, and he missed 1 play against Richmond because his helmet came off. So he took every snap that he could take.
Yeah.
Every snap that he was able to take, he took. And I told everybody back in August, and I maintained it through the season as much as people couldn't believe it. If you've got the Grand Canyon, you got Gio on this side and the rest of the room was on the other side. That's the way the staff seated. And they showed it by how they kept him out there for every snap, no matter what the score was. So maybe he's their guy. Maybe this was their feeling out Gio year to get him super coached up to be a different guy next year with more talent, more skill around him. A wide receiver room, we thought that was better than it would be, didn't turn out to be much. They didn't get much at all from the tight end room. A year earlier, they had a fantastic tight end room. Last year, it wasn't very good. Gio's probably the kind of quarterback that needs a really good tight end. You need that tight end bailout. You need to be able to run that stuff, especially when you get in the red zone. And this team settled for a lot of field goals. When you get close, you want to use that tight end to get into the red zone, which they didn't do against Wake. Remember, they ran 17 snaps inside the 30 at Wake and gained a total of 4 yards. Imagine what having a high-end tight end would do in those situations, and they didn't have that. They didn't even run anything to tight ends when they were inside the 30 in that game. So maybe they think Gio's the right guy for a ball control offense with the right parts around him and a better offensive line in front of him with a year under his belt of the tutelage of this staff. We don't know what they think. They're not talking a lot. It's kind of a dark program. It's hard to get a lot of inside information on this, but we do know that they love Gio this year. Yeah. And we do know that Gio was eons ahead of anybody else. And the fact that Torrey Newkirk played in just 2 games, the one pass he threw against Richmond, and then when he went in for Max Johnson late against NC State, and Bryce Baker played no snaps, is kind of mind-boggling. It's not what you typically see from a college coach. I think a lot of people would have liked to seen some Bryce Baker out there just to see him, so they'd have something to visualize right now when they think ahead to next season. But they don't have that. We don't have that. We have snippets from practice that we were able to see from a distance, and that's about it. But the staff knows, and we're going to find out an awful lot about what they think of these 4 guys, I think, in the next few weeks.
Yes, without a doubt. And Belichick maintained that all year long, like you said, how much he in every press conference this season, when we would ask him about Gio, it was basically the same thing and how he kept improving. Gio and Bill Belichick met, I think it was every Monday during the season. They went over film, just the 2 of them. There were no more players in there. It was one-on-one stuff. So it's pretty evident that this program and this coaching staff really believes in Gio. So that could give you some confidence in the fact that they want to keep him. They want to play him again this year. They've poured so much into him already. You want to continue to develop him as a quarterback. So, yeah, it'll be fascinating. Want to see what this injury is, see how that affects everything and shakes everything up. But in the end, they're going to have to make some decisions. They're going to come sooner rather than later.
You and I are going to each do a piece. You're going to take the offense. I'm going to take the defense. 10 current players with eligibility remaining that they need to prioritize. So, and we're going to limit it at 10 because who knows how much movement there's going to be. These conversations are taking place, which could trigger movement of kids that originally didn't think they were moving on. Kids that wanted to stay might have come out of the conversation and say, I got to go. They may get forced out. There may be a player or 2 that talks them into saying, yeah, come on back. We want you here. It's a different world. Lombardi emphasized it's a business. If you've seen those HBO shows about NFL teams when they're cutting guys, it's probably a little bit like that, probably a little more personal, you would hope, than as impersonal as those conversations are. But it's going to be sort of like that. And it's happening. And keep in mind, the kids don't have to enter the portal. They cannot enter the portal till January 2nd. So just because names have not come out yet doesn't mean that they're not leaving. And that's and Lombardi kind of made a comment, well, you guys are panicking over 4 guys leaving. Well, now it's 5. It's actually more than that when you think about some of the things that happened earlier this year. Only reason kids' names get out now is because they choose to put their names out now. They don't have to. We won't know fully until the portal opens, and we have the opportunity, the ability to look into the portal to see who is there, and that's when we'll fully know exactly what the roster turnover is going to look like. Any projections? Let's have some fun and make some projections. 71 players with eligibility can come back, and we know at least 5 can't unless they're going to go on walk-on status. How many players of these 71 do you think, and I'll give a number 2 to be fair, do you think will be back on the roster for spring football?
It's a great question. I immediately go to names rather than total number of guys that I feel like for sure will be back, guys that I feel like for sure won't be back. I'm not sure how smart putting those projections out is. You can go ahead. I think I have approximately my number, but go ahead.
Okay, well, I agree with you. Some people are going to say, you said it was that number. We don't know for sure. We don't have enough information to be able to make a supremely educated guess. It's just an educated guess right now. I think about 40.
Okay.
Which would be losing about 31.
Right. I was at about 30 or 35. So I think we're pretty close.
Close to half.
I think that's what it's going to be. These conversations have not all already happened. They're going to be happening throughout the month of December. But I think there's going to be a pretty big roster turnover, and that's not anything against Carolina. That's the nature of the game. Most programs in the country have pretty big roster turnover. That's just how it is now. It's just how it is. And so they're going to be able to go into the portal. And you mentioned earlier, like wanting to maybe find, if they keep Gio, wanting to find a good tight end. Well, where do you go to find a proven tight end? You go to the portal. Yeah. And so they can really help Gio if they so choose to keep Gio. They can really help him through the portal. They can really add some assets outside of Jordan Shipp, who told us that he's going to be here. You can really add another proven receiver outside of him to be able to help Gio, help the offense. Offensive line and defensive line feel like they're always going to be priorities with this regime. Building in the trenches is something they always talk about. But yeah, I think there's going to be a pretty significant turnover when it comes to the roster. And again, Michael Lombardi said that that's not really what to look at. What you look at is the guys that are here, the guys that they're able to develop, that they're able to hang on to and get that year-round work without the spring portal. But yeah, I'm with you. I think that there's going to be pretty significant turnover.
I think they need to go get a receiver who could take the top off the defense as well.
Yep.
That was missing. And I know that Gio doesn't throw a great long ball. And that was one of the gripes the program had when I put that out there in early August, but he doesn't throw a great long ball. But you know what, though? If you can suck in the defense, you don't have to get the ball 50 yards downfield for a guy to take off top off the defense. You can get him into the second level, third level, get the ball to him, and he can use his legs for the rest. And they could use a couple of guys. They need to get some big plays. They didn't have that many this year. If the 72-yard screen pass for a touchdown Damon June had at Syracuse, that was 72 passing yards for Gio. And Damon ran 76 yards on that play.
Yeah.
So you've got to get guys that can make plays, and then suddenly that little pick yourself down the field with a pop here and a pop there changes things dramatically. And that's what they need to prioritize as well, and I believe that they will. Any last thoughts before we sign off on football for a while? Let me clarify. Not sign off for a while, but sign off on this topic. We're going to be back talking football as the news happens.
Yeah, the most important thing is you mentioned like wanting to take the top off, wanting to make this offense better, and that starts with the run game. So we could talk all we want about these receivers, about bringing in another high-quality receiver outside of Jordan Shipp. This running back room, I think, is one of the most important position groups on this roster when it comes to who's going to enter the portal, who's going to stay. You have a lot of proven players in that room, right? Like they played so many different guys this year. there's no way, I can't see all of them saying, hey, let's all, split a 5-way workload again, right? There's going to be at least one guy who's like, I want to get out of here. I want to go get a proven workload somewhere where I know exactly what it's going to be next year. Who that is, it's to be determined. Damon June really feels like one of those guys that have to lock up. Although when you look at it, where does Damon June's mindset fall into this? Because he came off in he was almost at 200 total yards against Syracuse. Next game, 3 carries for 4 yards. So where's his mindset on all this? And Ben Hall, could he be a guy that wants to leave because he thought he would have a bigger role? Davion Goss, right? Like, there's so many moving parts, but I think the running back room is the most important. If they're able to have a good run game, they'll be able to open up this offense.
And let me add one more thing to that too. It's a really good point. These guys know what the run blocking was like.
Yeah.
And in the last 4 games of the season, this team averaged 2.7 yards a rush. So it's not just them. They're going to need to go out and get some offensive linemen. And people need to understand that offensive linemen are very expensive. They cost a lot of money in the portal. You've already got a quarterback locked up that's not part of the revenue share because he got the deal in before the house settlement. So maybe they're like, hey, we got to spend money on, if we give Gio a better offensive line that could pass protect better. And they weren't completely terrible. If you go look at the PFF grades, it's higher than you would think, but than you would expect. They need to be a better run blocking team. That needs to improve more than the pass protection, in my opinion, because they were terrible at times on first down runs. Terrible at times. And they put Gio in a bad spot. And they put him in a bad spot when you had maybe 2 wide receivers that knew how to get open consistently. If you go back and we're going to do the research, the wide receiver targets over the last 5 games are probably 85% Kobe and Jordan. And I guarantee you there were more running backs targeted than the rest of the wide receiver room combined during that stretch.
Yeah.
And they only have a couple of guys that can run routes. They need more guys that can run routes. They got that pass protection, which is part of there are coverage sacks. There's coverage pressure. There's guys that can't get open. That makes the quarterback look bad. It makes the offensive line look bad. They need to get better on the offensive line. They need to have 2-way offensive linemen, guys that can run block and pass block. You know what? They cost money. And you're talking about linebackers. Linebackers cost money. Trust me, Kamori's going to get a lot of money. I think Kamori House was a good player at times. I think Kamori House was not a whole lot better against NC State than he was TCU. I thought there were some pre-snap mistakes by him that put him in bad spots. That mistake against Clemson, that play they ran the first play, that was on him. And I'm not dumping on him at all. It's just that they need to get guys that don't make those mistakes, and they cost a lot of money. Kamori has that on film. He's going to get a ton of money from somebody. So Carolina's got to spend a lot of money on the offensive line, a lot of money at linebacker. They're going to have to go out and get a couple more wide receivers like we talked about and fill in some of the other cracks. So who knows where the movement will actually be. But those are areas they're going to have to cough up a lot of change.
Welcome to modern day college football. There's a price for everything. There's a price for everyone. Just what it is.
Absolutely. And for us, 40 minutes is our price for this daily drop. He is Noah Weisskopf. I'm AJ. We appreciate you guys stopping by. Make sure that you like this video. Share it with your Carolina Tar Heel friends. Let them know we are here. Make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell so you get updates every time we upload. And if you've been around following us, you know we upload all the time. We appreciate y'all stopping by.